This story begins with two bin bags in a hospital car park in Tours, northwest France. As a couple of cleaners walk by, they are strangely drawn to the bags, which are blue. The hospital bin bags are black. In the bags are human remains. In one, arms and legs, and in the other, a chest. This, my fellow crime dogs, is one of the most unique and terrifying cases in the history of French criminology. When police arrive on the scene, they quickly realise that parts of the body are missing. The following day, another identical bag is found close by in a supermarket car park. This time they find a pelvis. However, this anatomic puzzle is incomplete. The head is missing. Police without the head have little to go on. The body has no distinguishing features, so all they can do is go to the press. And they launch an appeal for missing people in an attempt to identify her. A few days later, they get an anonymous call. The caller claims the body is a certain Françoise Gendron. Police pop round to her place to check out the lead. Neighbours confirm that they haven't seen her for several days. They smash the door in and find her cat desperate for food, but no Françoise. They take fingerprints from the apartment and it's a match for the remains found in the bags. They discover that Françoise has a boyfriend, so they pay him a visit. Yves claims that they'd planned to see each other on the 12th. He went round to her place, cooked a meal, and waited for her to return. Then the phone rings. A woman tells Yves that Françoise has left town for a few days to go and visit friends. Yves can't believe it. He's spent ages cooking dinner, so in a huff he chucks the food on the floor and leaves. Police then find out that earlier that day a friend of Françoise named Christian went round with some wallpaper because he was doing some work for her over there. He states that when he knocked on the door, a woman answered and told him that Françoise was taking a bath. As the woman chats with Christian at the door, Françoise arrives and tells him that she'd almost died. A hairdryer had fallen into the bath. She'd got a little shock, but she was okay. Officers question people close to Françoise to try and find out who this mystery woman is. And one name keeps popping up: her best friend, Sylvie Reviriego. Before they have time to go and see her, they receive another anonymous call. A woman claims that she learned from Sylvie that two of Françoise's friends, Luc and Michel, are behind the murder. Sylvie also told this woman that Françoise was going to dob them into the police for drug trafficking. When the guys found out, they began plotting to kill Françoise. Police quickly find out who this Sylvie is. She's 37 years old, divorced, and has 2 kids. She also lives in Tours, and she works in the hospital as a surgical assistant. They go round to her house, and Sylvie allows them to search it. In the bathroom, they find something. In a purse, they find gold dental crowns. And in a trap underneath the bath, they find a jewellery box. In it, plenty of jewels, which, following the information given to them by Françoise's boyfriend Yves, police confirm belong to Françoise. She claims she found the crowns somewhere and just kept hold of them, and she says she's no idea where the jewellery came from. Around the bath, they also find small brown stains, possibly dry blood. Something has gone on here. It's more than enough evidence for officers, and Sylvie is arrested. Back at the station, she quickly confesses that Françoise was killed in her home, but not by her. It was her friends Michel and Luc, just like the phantom caller said. Police track them down and bring them in for questioning. To gauge their reaction, they are immediately shown photos of the dismembered body and told that it belongs to Françoise. Michel and Luc are genuinely horrified. They had heard that a body had been discovered, but had no idea it was Françoise's until the police told them so. They both break down, claiming there was never any issue between them and Françoise, and certainly nothing to do with any drugs. They also have a solid alibi, so it couldn't have been them. They go back to Sylvie, whose attempt to frame her friends had failed miserably. And it doesn't take much pressure from police for her to confess to everything. I hope you are sitting comfortably, cause Sylvie's confession is pretty wild. Okay, here we go. She admits to going round to see Françoise that morning with the intention of killing her. When she gets there, she sees Françoise is in a bath, and she sees her opportunity. There is a hairdryer on the counter, and she pretends to accidentally knock into it and it falls into the bath. Françoise gets a wee shock, but she is fine. I'm guessing Sylvie just made some excuse that she hadn't seen it there. Time out for a minute. If I was taking a bath and someone threw a hairdryer in there, I'd be like, what the f***? Why did you just throw a hairdryer in my bath? And I'd get out of there. For some reason, Françoise didn't seem to mind that much, and they just carried on with their date. This is when Christian knocks on, and they exchange a few words at the door. As he's there to do some work, it foils Sylvie's plan, so she suggests that they go to her place, under the pretext that she'd sewn a dress that she wanted Françoise to try on. Back at her place, Sylvie serves Françoise a tea laced with Lexamil, a drug usually used to treat anxiety. Françoise understandably starts to feel a bit funny, so Sylvie tells her to have a lie down. Sylvie's kids come home at midday for lunch, and they spot Françoise lying down on her mum's bed. She tells them she just had too much to drink the night before and was sleeping it off. When the kids leave to go back to school, Sylvie prepares a second cup of tea, laced with more drugs, and she runs Françoise a bath, suggesting it would help her to feel better. Françoise is completely out of it at this point. Sylvie then, cool as you like, explains how she then drowns Françoise in the bath. She then proceeds to cut Sylvie's veins with a scalpel that she'd stolen from the hospital, draining all the blood from her body. When she pulls the plug, the blood washes away with the bathwater. She then drags the body to her balcony and covers it up with a sheet. She cleans the bathroom as well as she can before her kids come home, and she calls Françoise's boyfriend to give him the fake story that she'd left town for a few days. Oh yeah, and while all this is happening, she's preparing a birthday party for her 14-year-old son. The party takes place in the flat while the body is lying there on the balcony. After the party, she goes to her parents' place to grab some tools, a massive hunting knife and a hatchet. Okay, if you are currently eating, I suggest you take a break while I run through what happens next. The following day, she begins cutting up the body. She starts with the head, which she puts in a bucket. She continues cutting up the body on the balcony for 2 hours, putting various pieces into bin bags. She then runs out of bin bags, so she goes to the supermarket to get some more, and she buys some groceries at the same time for dinner, as you would. By the end of the morning, she is done. She dumps 2 bags at the car park at the hospital and a 3rd bag at the supermarket car park. Her son even helped her carry one of the bags down to the car because they were heavy. Obviously, he had no idea what was inside. It gets worse. It takes her 3 nights to deal with the head. With a hammer, she removes the flesh and she knocks out the teeth, which she then chucks down the toilet, except the gold ones, she kept them. As she is struggling to smash the skull, she has the genius idea of sticking it in the oven on full power overnight for 3 nights in a row. She tells the interrogators that she slept like a baby. On the 3rd night, on the way to drop off her son at his father's house, she stops off along the Vienne River and throws what remains of the head into the water as her son watches on. She claims she doesn't understand her own crime. Yes, Françoise got on her nerves. She had an annoying laugh. She slept around. She was constantly asking Sylvie for money. When they went out, Françoise always got first pick on the guys. Reason enough to commit murder and then butcher the body? I'm not so sure. Seems a bit far-fetched to me. Despite what she did though, she doesn't seem crazy. She understands that what she did was wrong. She's evaluated by 2 psychiatrists in the Orléans prison. They go in expecting to find an individual suffering from a severe mental disorder. In reality, they find her lucid and intelligent. She recounts the crime in a calm, chronological order with considerable attention to detail. The question, therefore, is why? There must be something seriously wrong with Sylvie for her to act this way. One theory is drugs. Sylvie had been taking a dangerous cocktail of slimming pills in the 6 months leading up to the murder. The doctor who prescribed them was subsequently suspended for 3 months. Experts conclude that on a physical level, these drugs could have enhanced dementia, but only if the person was suffering from it in the first place, which is not the case here. They could also cause mood swings and moderate memory loss. It was for sure a bad combination, but in their opinion, it didn't contribute to her vicious act. Another psychiatrist orders an MRI of her brain, but that comes back normal too. During a later psychiatric visit, she changes her story, stating she doesn't remember committing the murder or cutting up the body, or even having already seen a psychiatrist. All she remembers is her son's birthday and throwing bin bags into the water without knowing what was in them. Having discounted the drugs for this sudden amnesia, they think that Sylvie is suffering from some form of post-traumatic stress disorder, making her subconsciously unable to remember what she's done. Sylvie and Françoise had known each other since school. Sylvie had a tough upbringing. She had polio when she was young and the kids mocked her for it. But she gets married and she has 2 kids. Everything is going well, but then she finds out that her husband had been cheating on her. She even at one point attempted to take her own life. She divorces him, and it's at that point that she moves back to Tours with her 2 kids. She then rekindles her friendship with Françoise, who'd never moved away. They would go out a lot together, but they start to become rivals more than friends, and it would seem they had a real love-hate relationship. However, jealousy and a dislike for someone usually ends in a civilized conversation and a parting of ways, not murder and decapitation. Sylvie's trial begins in the summer of '91. The prosecution is demanding the maximum sentence of life in prison with no possibility of parole. During proceedings, she mainly just stares at the ground. She shows no emotion and claims to not remember killing her best friend. Her lawyers argue Sylvie was suffering from drug-induced psychosis, but the experts all deduced that she was well aware of what she was doing. It's a tough sell by the defense team because the premeditation here is blatant. She made a first attempt to kill her in her own flat with the hairdryer before taking her to her own place to finish the job. She also had the whereabouts to accuse her friends and steal her jewelry. The fact that the doctor was suspended implies that the prescription was most definitely dangerous, but according to doctors, not enough to lead her to murder. On the 28th of June 1991, she is sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 15 years. It would appear that her amnesia faded in prison as she allegedly shared the story with anyone that was willing to listen. In August 2009, her parole is granted, and she leaves prison a free woman. She is assigned a psychologist with whom she must meet regularly. She has since moved to Paris and changed her name. Although this case was solved, it leaves us with a lot of questions. Apart from the polio, there's no real trauma in Sylvie's life which would turn her into such a monster. So what could lead someone to such acts of violence if it wasn't the drugs that she was on? And if she was under some kind of psychosis, why keep the jewels and the dental crowns? And why go to the effort of chopping up the body if you're just going to leave it in the car park of the local hospital? Why not throw everything in the water, Dexter style? It's terrifying to think someone so normal could do something like this. Something doesn't make sense here. Let me know in the comments if you have the answers to any of these questions, or if you think there is more to this case than meets the eye. Thank you to everyone who watches our videos. We are still in shock that we have reached so many of you. There is plenty more to come from the Crime Dog team, so if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and we'll see you next time.